record this on. Okay. Hi, Stephen. Welcome.
Hello.
All right. Today we have a few questions for you. In particular, the fact that you are the author of many books, but the one that I have in my hand is Black in the British Frame. And we want to sort of know how that came about and also how you actually became involved in writing about very, very pertinent people who were Black talent back in the day and who never really got the recognition that they needed, and how we can address that now.
Well, that's the whole point. You see, they never got recognition, but I recognized that quite early on when I was still at school. What happened with me was, the only way I can explain it is to say that I come from a working class family, South London working class, and grew up in the 1960s and 70s, which was almost like particularly the 60s, a golden age of television. And I loved television. And in a working class home, my sister and I had unlimited access to television. It was fantastic. And at the same time, although I'm from a predominantly white working class family, I did have an adopted older aunt who was Black and British, born in London before the First World War. So I had a very close relationship with her. And early on, again, I always had a question in mind. I became sort of interested through her in Black British history. And at the same time, although I'm loving British television and watching all kinds of programs, everything from, Blue Peter to the Vietnam War on the news. I mean, I'm like 9 years old. Mm-hmm. So you Blue Peter at 5 o'clock with Valerie Singleton making something out of sticky back plastic. And within 45 minutes, the tea time news is on with children being napalmed in Vietnam.
Yeah.
The extremes were incredible. Right. Doctor Who Saturday, Martin Luther King's assassinated the following Tuesday, or whatever it was. It was these extremes, and I was absorbing all of this, but I was also noticing how Black people were being presented on television. But I kept an open mind and realized that there was some good stuff and some bad stuff. And of course, as a teenager in the 70s, that's when what I call the dodgy sitcom generation started, with Love Thy Neighbour, Mixed Blessings. They were awful, they were badly written, some very fine Black actors in them, but their talents were being diluted. But it was only in later years that I was able to go back through the Black and White and Colour project at the British Film Institute and the BBC and reassess all this wonderful archive stuff and realise there were some brilliant plays and drama series and documentaries on in that period, in addition to the stuff that I've been viewing.
Could you talk about the Black and White in Colour project? What was that about?
Well, that was a remarkable opportunity for me. I was simply in the right place at the right time. Okay, so if I show you this was like a booklet that was published in 1992 to coincide with the documentary that we made, or Black and White in Colour. But it actually began as a research project. What happened was, I graduated from the London College of Printing in 1988 with a degree in film and television. Mm-hmm. And my research paper, not my thesis, but my research paper on Black actors in British television. My tutor said, send it to the British Film Institute, which I did. They called me in to do an internal seminar on the paper that I'd written. Unbeknownst to me, the British Film Institute and the BBC were in the process of co-funding a 3-month research project on the history of Black people in British television.
Oh,
okay. In the right place at the right time. I knew a lot of this stuff anyway. They'd already contracted Therese Daniels, who was interested in documentary programs about this. And so they asked me if I would join her. There was 2 of us, and I would do all the drama and entertainment research on Black people in British television. That 3-month project was so successful, and we'd hardly scratched the surface, that Therese and I were contracted for another year, and then another year after that, because the project just mushroomed. And then it eventually evolved into a BBC BFI television documentary, a 2-part documentary, using all the interviewees that we found: Rudolph Walker, Lenny Henry, Carmen Munro, all these great people, Norman Beaton we interviewed, Cy Grant, I mean, a long list. And the archive that we found, which was fantastic, this archive that we kept finding in the BBC and ITV.
Where is all that material now?
Well, most of it was deposited in the National Film and Television Archive, which was part of the British Film Institute anyway. So we worked very closely with all these television archives, because you've got to remember, there's the BBC archive, and because we were part funded by them, Therese and I had access to the BBC television archive, which most people didn't get.
Yeah.
But we also had access to building up relationships with them, with all the ITV archives, Anglia Television, Granada Television, London Weekend Television, Thames Television, Channel 4. So, and a lot of these ITV companies don't exist anymore. So it was at that kind of period where they still exist and still had their own individual archives. But because we knew, we'd familiarized ourselves through the radio times and the TV times of all the programs from the 1950s, particularly from the 1950s onwards, it was fantastic. Every week we would find something else in the archive that we didn't know existed, because no one had ever done it, no one had ever focused on it. And it was a really interesting experience. And then it kind of eventually ended with the documentaries that were shown in 1992. But that, again, was, as I pointed out to some people, a fascinating experience, because we had a black director, Isaac Julian, from Sankofa Independent Film and Video Collective. He was contracted to direct the documentary, and he insisted on having as many black people on the crew, on the production side, as possible.
Right.
I, of course, was an exception, but Therese and I did most of the interviews, on-camera interviews. Isaac did a few. And then we had a black sound woman, Judy Hedman. We had a black cameraman, probably the only black cameraman at the BBC at the time, Remy Adefarazin. There was a black driver to go and collect people, a black makeup woman they found who could do makeup. It was really brilliant atmosphere in that studio. And we were in this studio, television studio, for about a month, 3 weeks to a month. Very intense. And we did over 40 interviews.
So my question is also, though, that actual documentary, is it available that people can watch it now?
No, I wish it was. I keep asking the British Film Institute to put it in their Mediatek. They have the documentary in their archive. They have the 40 unedited interviews in their archive. To my knowledge, the only one that's been used was Stuart Hall. Professor Stuart Hall was narrator of the documentary.
Okay.
When the BFI, when John O'Confer made a documentary about him, he was able to access that unedited interview with Stuart Hall and use clips that hadn't been seen before. And so I know that it's a resource that really needs more attention and more badgering of the BFI to make it accessible. And I would love to see that documentary, 2-part documentary, shown more widely and become more accessible.
Okay. You talked about the gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers are, the producers and those people who say yay or nay to anything that's going to happen on television.
Yes.
And
yes.
You had a lot of no's in terms of when you approach people. What do you think causes that?
Causes what?
When you have your work, which is about Black film history, Black talent, etc., and you have your books and you want to get them either published, or you want people to actually
right,
create
do something with them once they're
about
published.
it. But when you go, the attitude is sort of, well, no, we don't do that sort of thing.
Well, that has been the case up until the Black Lives Matter movement, which took off a year ago. Yes, absolutely. I understand the question. It's the gatekeepers. The gatekeepers are the publishers, the production people that run Film on 4 or BBC Drama, whatever it be. And they are, in my humble experience, very white and very middle class with a particular attitude, which I think 9 times out of 10 has been very negative. We have seen some extraordinary breakthroughs in recent years. And when you look at the recent BAFTA television awards, if we stick with television, In Limbo won Best Single Drama.
Yes.
The Windrush Scandal drama, which was brilliant. Michaela Cole won Best Actress. May I Destroy You.
Yes.
May I Destroy You was nominated with Steve McQueen's Small Axe for Best Series. And Michaela won that award over Steve McQueen. So it shows how much progress has been made, but it is progress, but only a few people are allowed through the door. So what I was saying before was that while the BBC as an institution, television institution, will trust Lenny Henry. So Lenny Henry gets commissioned to do another drama on the radio or on television or another documentary. He did one recently on Black composers. So Lenny Henry, as much as I love him and respect him, gets quite a big piece of the BBC television radio pie. Does that make sense? No disrespect to him because he's very good. David Olusoga, who does exemplary work, whether it be a documentary about Windrush Scandal or whether it be his superb House Through Time. I love his series House Through Time. But everything David Olusoga touches turns to gold. Michaela Cole is clearly now stepped in as a Black woman doing remarkable work on British television in the drama field. But then you sort of start to run out of names. It is like, there are others I know who don't have such a high profile. But when I say gatekeepers, they are people that either let people in or shut people out.
Okay.
And I think they probably shut out more than they let in.
Right. Following on from that, I have noticed that, and this goes to my days doing my MA, that when the gatekeepers would come to, I did the MA in television script writing. De Montfort. And when the gatekeepers would come as visiting tutor or what have you, and we are there to pitch to them what our script was.
Yes.
Without fail, I was the only Black woman in the class. There's only
I'm not surprised.
Right? Yeah. And I would pitch a story which is obviously from a Caribbean perspective. And I would get this response. Well, why do you have to have so many children in the story? Why does the family have to be so big? That's the first initial response. And I'm saying because we have big families. Or it might be a problem from a production point of view. So my argument was, I have in the exact same people that are in the Waltons. I have exactly the same amount of people, and that is a very successful series over the years. So what's your point? Of course, no response. The other one I got was, I said, well, why with Black comedy? You know, after the Desmond, nothing of any cost.
And even Desmond's was buried or has been buried.
Right. And the response was, well, there's probably no good Black writers. And I said, excuse me? And he realized what he said. And he sort of said, well, you know, but there's Michaela Cole when she was doing chewing gum. Right.
Yes.
That's chewing gum. And
Yes.
I just looked and said, and that is what really fueled me to say, no, we need to do something about this situation, because the point that you made when I was listening to your presentation yesterday on Black History Walks is that, you know, things are buried. It's as if people are not being recognized for what they are, who they are. And
You see, my coming in on that, if you don't mind, my sort of conclusion has always been this, that unless the history is better known and unless the history makers are respected, i.e. the Black and White and Colour Project, it's a resource that one can still look at and learn from, and that it's not all about black and white minstrels and absences and racist attitudes. There's a rich history in British television and especially at the BBC that should be bigged up, that should be understood better, so that it empowers people, not just Black people coming into the profession now thinking, oh my God, there was a Black actor playing a leading role on BBC television in a drama in 1938, which there was. If people don't know this, what the reason, you asked me very early on in the interview about what motivated me to do Black in the British Frame. It was partly because I had all this knowledge anyway, and I wanted to put it into a book. But it was also naively, as it turned out, because I wanted that book, when it was published, to influence the television companies, the BBC, the ITV, the Channel 4, into understanding the Black British intervention into British television, which wasn't all negative, that there was some positive stuff, because positive empowers. And as you saw through that talk the other night on Black in the British Frame, there's lots of examples that I drew upon and lots that I didn't have time to. And I naively thought that if people understood the history better, then it will change attitudes. Then the white middle class people wouldn't be so nervous and anxious about doing race, because there's a good tradition, there's a positive tradition. That has never happened. The book failed to do that. No, it wasn't my failure, it was the failure of, well, I mean, for example, the media didn't pick up on the book. I've been writing Black British history books for 30 years. I've never been reviewed in The Guardian or The Telegraph. You know, that the media, if the media don't publicize your work, then the people working within those institutions are not going to know your work exists.
Well, it goes back to the same question.
Yeah.
Why is it that they don't want to actually highlight this part of their history?
Because they're afraid of being criticized for doing it. They don't want to take the risks. That's why they let some through the gates. Steve McQueen, Michaela Cole, Lenny Henry, David Olusoga, they let a few through that they know they can trust, and because they have a high media.
Explain that word, please, Stephen. Trust. That they know they can trust.
That they know they can trust.
Yeah, explain.
Trust to deliver the goods, even if it does, even if it's something that makes viewers uncomfortable, some viewers uncomfortable, or unsettling, like David Olusoga's Windrush scandal documentary, and the documentary he did with David Lammy about the African soldiers from World War I who were never commemorated and respected. You know, but it needs, but there is still this resistance, because as I say, it's about trust, and it's taken, like someone, to be fair to David Olusoga, it's taken him 20 years working within that institution to get as far as he has. I remember meeting him very early on when he was younger and started working at the BBC, and he's paid his dues. I mean, he's worked his way through, and I got the utmost respect for him, and I do think he makes good programs. But there should be a whole range of people from African Caribbean backgrounds doing similar kind of work across the board. And also there's still too much, to my dislike, too much emphasis on African American culture and African American history. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you a very quick example, talking about radio now. So the BBC Radio 3 devoted a whole week of programs to Florence Price, the African-American composer, who's just been kind of rediscovered. But before that happened, when I proposed a documentary, a music documentary to Radio 3 on two Black British women composers from the Edwardian First World War period, they didn't want to know. They turned it down. There's a total difference between the two. And it's African-American. There's still some sections of the BBC that still feel more comfortable doing African-Americans than Black British. There is still this resistance. And you're right, the word is trust. If they don't trust people to do the right programs, then it's going to be harder to get them on the air.
One of the things, when Tony Warner did another webinar with, I think his name is Ron Sankofa, and it was looking at Black British television over the years. And one of the things that he mentioned was that there's a pattern. The pattern is there's some sort of riot and some upheaval within the UK community and within Black people, right? Whether it be the riots at Brixton or what have you. And immediately after, you notice all of these shows start to come out, as if bringing out from Empire Road or Desmond or any of those types of programs will pacify. And if you notice now, we have George Floyd murder and Black Lives Matter, and all of a sudden it's important that we get more Black people on television in the advertising and what have you. So it seemed he tracked it over the decades, and it seemed to be a pattern, as if to say, okay, well, we've got to do something to, pacify them.
No, he's right, because let's go back as far as 1958, the so-called Notting Hill race riots, where Black citizens were attacked, the murder of Kelso Cochrane, the Black student in Notting Hill in 1959. And then, as I said in my talk, the 60s, up until Enoch Powell, Rivers of Blood in 1958, I would say from 60 to 68, some remarkable programs about race, racism, Black culture, Black music, Black politics, extraordinary programs. So I think there was a consciousness that was raised. And then Enoch Powell comes along with his fictional disciple, Alf Garnett, in Till Death Us Do Part, who was a bigot. And then, as Carmen Monroe actually explained to me, it all collapsed and it all got forgotten. And we had to kind of start the process all over again. Yeah. And he's right. You can look at it in that way and see that when there is some media attention to something bad that happens to the Black community, the Brixton uprising, Tox death as well in 1981, then Channel 4 particularly responded with sitcoms and documentaries, and they even appointed a multicultural commissioning editor in 1982.
Okay.
But the one that replaced her was my former school teacher, Farouk Dondi. So I knew him from when I was a kid at school, when he was a teacher.
But then it's reactionary, isn't it?
So
it's reactionary. Something happens.
It is a reaction, but it's not helpful, because as we've sort of established, I think in a way through this interview, there's no consistency, there's no continuity, and it all gets forgotten. And then we have to start all over again. That's why I wrote Black in the British Frame, to try and address this so that there'd be a record of what had happened before. I'm not saying the book is perfect. I actually thought it would be the trigger for more and more books on the subject, and some going much deeper into the subject than I ever could. There's been one sort of theoretical kind of book by Sarita Malik, but very little else that I'm aware of that critiques Black British television, both positively and negatively.
The thing that I noticed with my studies is that also there's this other thing that's happening, in that once again, the whole Caribbean talent and Caribbean people is getting pushed to the ground, the bottom.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
African talent is rising because Africa, and when I say the continent of Africa, and in particular Nigeria with Nollywood,
Yeah,
they have this strong film base now in Nollywood.
they
And
do.
so therefore, they are increasing and excelling in that field. But the Caribbean talent remains almost stagnant.
Suppressed. It's suppressed.
Yes.
It isn't
And
given.
that has to be addressed. That is my thing. It has
The problem we have is that at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement last summer, as it was building and building, Black History Month hit in October. A lot of talks, and every time, because it was topical, the Black Lives Matter movement was topical, people were saying to me, do you think things will change? I said, I don't know. I can't answer that. It's too soon. Give it 2 or 3 years and we'll wait and see if the white middle class people at the BBC or in publishing or whatever it may be have changed their attitudes, because they ain't going nowhere. They ain't giving up their jobs for no one. So, but unless they facilitate and enable people from Caribbean backgrounds or Nigerian backgrounds or wherever it may be, to do more diverse work and diversify and decolonize, these institutions, then they are the gatekeepers. That's what I mean by the gatekeepers. I mean, they hold all the cards, really. And it's as I say, there are some exceptions that have been let through. I don't need to mention them all again, but it's very rare.
Is it reasonable to expect the gatekeepers to want to give up power? Because giving up power, that's the end of the real underlying trend. It's about the power. It's about the money.
I don't know how. I can only guess, hazard a guess as to how entrenched they are in the work that they do. And it's not so much about giving up power, it's about sharing opportunities, giving more opportunities to diverse range of people. It's like if you look at something comparable like gay television. I've written a book on the history of gay men in British television. And Russell T Davies is the obvious example of an openly gay man who writes brilliant television.
He came and spoke to us at the moment.
But the recent series, It's a Sin. Wow. I mean, I've got a young niece in her 20s who knew nothing about AIDS. She wasn't even born in the 1980s. And she learned so much and was asking me questions as an older sort of gay man. But there aren't like many Russell T Davieses doing explicitly gay television dramas or whatever. So they are very selective of who they let through the gate and who they keep on board. And they do, like I say, Russell T Davies, Steve McQueen, they do brilliant work. And I know they are very conscious of the fact that they need to diversify within their own productions that they do, and they do that, giving opportunities to people that normally wouldn't get those opportunities. Because Russell T Davies did get, sorry to divert, but don't forget, Russell T Davies earlier this year got vilified because he specifically wanted young gay, openly gay actors playing the gay characters. But an actor can play any sort of role. So you see, you can't win no matter how hard you try. You're always going to have somebody, particularly in this world of social media, which is scary, zooming in and criticizing.
Well, yes, that's just a given. that's a given. And finally, given, what do you think about the efforts that have been with the TV program on Channel 5 and Bourne? And the fact
I loved it, but again, very controversial. It was too much for some people. I do believe, this is my conclusion, I do believe that there should be colourblind casting. Absolutely. So I totally supported the casting of a black actress as Anne Boleyn. Why not? But I also support very much at the same time that African Caribbean people should be making their own programs from their own perspective.
Thank you.
Culture, absolutely. But it's not a given. It's not like, let's do colorblind casting, but not the other thing, or let's do African Caribbean programs by African Caribbean people and forget about colorblind. There has to be room for everything, because you have to remember, the way I look at it, Beverly, is that if you're a young Black woman going into a drama school, now the number of interviews I did for this book, Deep Are the Roots, the Trailblazer, another plug, Trailblazer, Black British Air, the number of Black actresses that told me that when they were at drama school, the only role they were allowed to play was Tituba in Arthur Miller's The Crucible.
Oh.
And another actress friend of mine said that she was the first Black actress to play a leading role at the National Theatre in 1969. And she thought, that's it, I'm made. And so her agent said, the only offers I'm getting are Tituba in The Crucible at repertory companies up and down the country. I mean, so I want drama schools now to look at Anne Boleyn and say, well, yeah, actually, we could have a play like, I don't know, off the top of my head, Shakespeare's Henry VIII, with Anne Boleyn's character played by a Black female student. Or even, you know, we've even had a Black actress playing Henry V on stage. I didn't see it, but I heard her on the radio. I thought, wow, took my breath away. So we need, to go back to your Anne Boleyn example, we need all those kind of opportunities opening up more and more. And in my book, the theatre book that's coming out, I can actually go back before Ira Aldridge, and the earliest known Black actor, actress that we know playing Shakespeare's Juliet was in the 1790s.
Oh.
If we don't know her name, all we know is that she was a young Black actress in England in the 1790s, playing Juliet and Polly in John Gay's The Beggar's Opera, or on tour somewhere. That's all we know. That was the reference I found in a book published in 1793.
Okay, well, okay. But there is so much more that needs to be done.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So as a final
on the
comment,
good work, build upon the good work, understand and familiarize oneself with the good work that's been done in the past, the good work, the positive stuff, and build upon that so that we don't start reinventing things that were done 50, 40 years ago. But
that makes sense. That makes no sense. We've got the information is there. We just need to be able to bring it,
process it.
Yeah, right.
And use it for the good, for the better.
Okay. I'm good.